Anyway, let's go live. We're live with another episode of BS Busters. Thank you for joining us. I'd like my panelists to introduce himself. Go ahead, sir.
Hey, everybody out there. Glad to be here on another one of these BS Busters. And yeah, everything seems to be falling apart.
Yeah, for some people. I mean, aside from being sick, I've been having a good day. Um, but. Um, so I guess the first topic we'll cover. Oh, and it's me, Mr. Red Fox, owner pride of BS Busters. I'm just glad to be on another podcast. Um, you know, doing what I got to do. So let's let's do this. The first topic is something that I thought was interesting because I thought it would lead to a good discussion. I'm putting it in the chat. It's a article from theextension.com, or sorry, timeextension.com, and here's how Nintendo reacted to the PlayStation beating N64. And I've read it. Functionally, basically, Jinyo Takeda says, "Look, um, our philosophy is we preferred quality over quantity. Um, Now, how much of that is saving face and how much of that is truthful, I don't know. Here's what I will say, just from my point of view, as someone who had a PS1 and an N64. I can make a list of top 20 N64 games, and all of them are fire. I can go back and play those games and still enjoy them.
Yeah,
It's really hard for me to say the same thing for the PlayStation.
I can see that. Mine was, I mostly had the PlayStation.
Yeah,
Because, you only had, you know, had a family where you could only have one console at a time, essentially, one console per generation. Now
yeah.
you get to a point where I did end up having multiple consoles per generation, but that was money I either
Yeah,
got.
it was your money.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was your money. Yeah, like for me, the argument is pretty much like I can see where part of this statement is them saving face. This article, them explaining away why they got their ass kicked. But I think ultimately it just boils down to, some people say, well, it was because of the hardware. That's bullshit. It was because of cartridges. Yeah, but here's the thing though, right? Like these same companies also put excellent games on the Game Boy Color and the Game Boy Advance and the DS and the 3DS and now the Switch. And all those gaming devices use cartridges.
yeah,
So that's kind of a shitty argument. I think ultimately it just boils down to Sony slung a metric fuck ton of money around to get that third party, especially JRPG support for the system. You know, they artificially propped up an entire genre of games on the PlayStation. Because notice when the PS3 hit, like the latter half of the PS3's life cycle, Sony stopped putting out money for JRPGs. And you saw the JRPGs dwindle to fucking nothing on the PlayStation 3. Same thing with the PS4 and the PS5. You might get one or two JRPGs every 2 or 3 years. Um,
yeah,
Whereas during the PS1, PS2 era, you could go to a GameStop or EB. Well, this is before it was EB Games. You go to EB Games, and you could go and find tons of cheap PS1, PS2 JRPGs, and some of them would be legit good, or at least fairly decent. Because really, the primo ones were like Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, Final Fantasy Tactics, the Final Fantasy Tactics slash Chrono Trigger combo. No, it was Final Fantasy. It was Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy 5 combo, duology. Even though the inferior version of those games was the PlayStation version because they had loading times. They fucking had loading times. Chrono Trigger on PlayStation had loading times. Whereas the definitive version of that game was the cartridge version, which didn't have loading times.
yeah.
Yeah, man. People don't like hearing that one. They get mad when they hear that. They're like, oh, don't say that.
Yeah. It's yeah. From what I hear, the PlayStation did have inferior versions of the multiplats. Um, there's only a few games I had on the on the N64, but yeah, there were probably a number of games. At least Super Smash Brothers, the first two Banjo Kazooie games, Super Mario 64, um, Paper Mario. Remember playing that with friends.
Really, you played that with
Um,
friends?
yeah, yeah, it was an odd situation, but uh, but yeah, it was one of those things where you know it was a game. It was a game we rented, so it was one of those situations where you know I would say the majority of the games I played were were rented growing up, but
Yeah, because that shit was expensive.
yeah, yeah, and ever since you know ever since we things the way they are now, it's even made gaming even more expensive, at least on consoles. Um, but
I mean,
then
there's
there's
sales. They're half-assed, but there's sales occasionally.
yeah, yeah. Let's see, PlayStation. There's I'd say that there's definitely a decent amount of games I played on the PlayStation that I can recall, but I think I just spent most of my time with the N64. Said multiplayer stuff on it. Yeah, and I did spend a lot of time growing up playing multiplayer stuff.
Yeah, the
Um,
N64 was the multiplayer console, but I mean, for me, like, even if I take the first party games out of it, a lot of the second and third party games on the N64 were superior to what you had on the PlayStation. For example, Rayman 3 Hoodlum Havoc. Amazing on the N64. PlayStation, kind of trash. um,
oh yeah, Rayman 2. That was PlayStation had the inferior version of
yeah.
that game because
Gauntlet
went back.
Legends.
I
Trash on
went
the
back.
N64.
Yeah, yeah. Because I remember getting Rayman 2 for the PlayStation 2. Or not the PlayStation 2, but
And
for
you were like, what the fuck is this? Yeah, yeah.
or for
The
the because
PS1.
I played the PlayStation version first, and then later on I ended up getting
The
because
N64 version.
that copy got damaged or ruined, and I ended up getting the N64 version. I was like, this plays and looks way better than the PlayStation version. Yes, they speak in gibberish, but whatever. The voice acting isn't that good anyway in the PlayStation version. That was like the only thing it had gone for it was it had actual voice acting, where the N64 and the Dreamcast version even look better than the N64
Yeah,
version.
well, the Dreamcast is technically a sixth gen console. It's not a fifth gen console. So yeah, clearly
Yeah.
it would look better on that system. Um, but yeah, man, for me, like I said, the big thing for me is just like I remember I remember playing these games and I'm like I remember there being much better games on the N64 than the
The PlayStation.
the PlayStation. Yeah, like the big games that were on the PlayStation. I remember like everyone's like, "Oh, you got to play Crash." I'm like, "This is a shit." Like I mean, why the fuck would I come here when I got Mario 64 at home, which is objectively a better game, and it's a launch title. It's a fucking launch title, and it's better than the shit you got.
I mean, it's true, but I enjoyed that was like the first. I think my first introduction to 3D platformers was Crash Bandicoot,
Yeah.
but uh, but yeah, and then Mario 64 came out and it was over. It's like uh, you'd see a platformer PlayStation, but it's not as good as Mario 64.
No, no, it was not. It was like everyone's like, oh man, don't you feel bad because you don't have a PlayStation? Because at the time I could only have one console, and I had the N64. Then later on, when I got a real job, I got a PlayStation, and I'm like, I am not impressed with these games. I don't think they're all that good. Matter of fact, they're kind of ass. Like
Oh,
if this is the competition, I mean, clearly Sony spent a lot of money on marketing because it wasn't the games. And I can prove this because go and look at the PlayStation Classic, the PlayStation Mini they did, and how that shit flopped. Okay,
didn't those things have a problem with overheating?
what, the PlayStation Mini?
You
No,
know, single play-
no, it
Are you,
wasn't. The issue wasn't the overheating. The issue with the PlayStation Classic was they used shitty emulators for it. Like they
you're
used the
talking about the
cheapest.
you're talking about the PlayStation Class. I thought you were talking about because they came out. There was a PlayStation. There's the OG big, great PlayStation, and then they came out with like a smaller white PlayStation that's probably the size of like a
Yeah, they stripped
slightly
out
bigger than a disc.
parts. Yeah, they stripped out
Yeah.
parts and it was cheaper to make, but it still had the. I mean, they made it smaller and it used less plastic, but it still was like it still had all the functionality. But yeah, man, I just when I see that shit, I'm like right now, if Nintendo said we're dropping an N64 Mini, everyone would get excited about that shit.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Sony came out with a PlayStation fucking classic and it was trash.
There's something about the GameCube and the N64 that make a lot of people. Those were consoles that were heavily made fun of, heavily just like brushed off. For like the PlayStation or the PlayStation 2. Uh, but they something about the N64 and PlayStation or N64 and GameCube that attract a lot of gaming collectors.
You know why, right?
Why is that?
Because despite people hating on those consoles, they had really good games on them.
Yeah.
Like everyone can think of some obscure game they had on the N64 or the GameCube, and it was a fucking amazing, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the PlayStation had a lot of generic, a whole bunch of fucking generic. Like that, the PlayStation and PlayStation 2 should be called, oh, generic console here. How do you like my generic console? Don't you enjoy how generic it is? It is generic. Um, and when you mention that, people get mad. They're like, "Don't say that. Don't say that shit."
Yeah.
You know, don't say that shit out loud because they're gonna get mad when they hear that. They're like, "How dare you?" You know, the PlayStation is the best console ever. Sony makes the best consoles ever. I'm like, okay, cool. Question: if Sony makes the best consoles ever, then and they win every console gen, which is laughable.
Not true.
Um,
Mhm.
why is it that, like I said, this is semi anecdotal. Why is it that when they came up with what they called the you know when they did their mini, like everyone was like, "What the fuck is this shit right here?" People were
It's,
legit mad.
well, I mean, people realize it's like a lot of those games were not owned by Sony. Those weren't. They were on PlayStation, but they weren't PlayStation games, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Yeah. Like a lot of those other games, uh, with multiple sequels or re-releases, ended up on everything else eventually. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, everybody has fond memories of the PlayStation and all those games, but those that all that was third party,
yeah,
you know.
or second parties that they kind of just didn't give a fuck about after a certain period of time.
And it's like the only. I mean, and some of the bigger games like your Crash Bandicoots and Spyro, those weren't even owned by Sony. Those were owned by Universal.
Universal Vivendi, well, later on Universal Vivendi.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think people I think people kind of realize how weak you know the PlayStation actually was, and that. But in all honesty, that classic could have been a grand slam if they were willing to you know
Put the money out to
basically
actually
like
support it properly.
yeah.
But they fucked it up. They fucked it up. They come on, man. They look, man. Here's the thing, right? As soon as Sony said we're making the PlayStation Classic, knowing what I know about gaming, I was like, this is gonna flop spectacularly. Let me get my popcorn and my beer. um, like I knew it was gonna fuck up because I was like, first of all, Sony's first party has always been weak. Even now, it's weak. Like their current presence, like our first party games aren't selling well enough.
Yeah.
Because either A, their games are too expensive to develop, or Sony has exaggerated expectations for their games. Like Spider-Man 1 sold 10 million, like over 10 million, and that was considered like barely breaking even for Sony. That's some bullshit. Because if I had something that I could sell for $60 to $70 a pop and it sold over 10 million units full price, you wouldn't see my ass anymore. I would quit.
Yeah. But you have all these costs we don't know about, and yeah, I don't get these companies. They're like we sold like a bajillion copies of this game and it was a failure. It's
Yeah,
like, wow, wow. You guys are just bleeding money. You might want to figure out where you're bleeding money so you could plug that hole up. God dang.
yeah. When I see that shit, I'm like, how the fuck did that shit happen? I don't know. That's
I bet Rebirth will sell like like 4 or 5 million. It'll bleed. It will bleed like. Of course, like I said yesterday, it bled a lot of the people that played the first game, but I'm sure it's gonna sell a lot, and Square is gonna be like, this ain't doing so hot.
it's not good enough.
This ain't doing.
It's not good enough.
Yeah,
It's not good enough. It's not good enough. Because here's the dirty little secret about Sony that no one wants to admit. Sony is full of shit. They've always been full of shit. Um, they did what Microsoft did for the Xbox, spending tons of money to make the Xbox look like it was strong in the market. When in reality, the Xbox was not strong in the market. Sony spent a lot of money to gain market share and mind share. But if you take a step back and really look at the PlayStation as a brand, it's not that good. It isn't. And I say this as someone who has a PS4, PS5, Xbox Series X, um, Switch. I have all the consoles, okay? The PlayStation is not that good of a console, all right? It's kind of trash. The only reason I have a PlayStation is because um, certain games run way better on it than on my Switch.
yeah,
And they're only on the PlayStation or the Switch or Xbox. And I'm like, I already have Game Pass for PC. I don't need it for the Xbox. Although I still have like a year long pass for Xbox Ultimate for like 6 months, and then like the year long one for just the Xbox console itself for like a year. I haven't activated that code yet.
yeah.
So I got like 6 months of Ultimate Game Pass for both my PC and my Series X, and then I got a year for the console. Haven't used it. Why? Because I don't really give a fuck about Game Pass. I'd rather own my games.
Yeah,
Um, I know, controversial topic.
yeah. I agree. I see where you're coming from. Yeah,
But hey, what the fuck do I know? I'm just some guy, you know?
yeah.
Anyway, anything you want to add before you move on to the next topic, sir?
Yeah, the PS1 and PS2 I thought were really good consoles. It's just that they lost me on the PS3
When
with
they went dude, bro.
yeah, when they were chasing the Xbox 360 and they
Yeah,
completely abandoned, like the JRPG stuff. And yeah, I was it. I was like, I guess this is a console isn't for me. I guess Sony isn't for me anymore.
fair, fair. Uh, so the next topic is too much money being bandied around in gaming, i.e., Skull and Bones. Now, this game, Yves Guillemot basically said that this game is a quadruple A game. That doesn't mean the quality. That just means they spent a metric fuck ton of money, close to $1 billion on this game, like a huge sums of money on this game. All right. Um. So that begs the question: are we spending too? Is too much money being spent on these games to where they would have to sell? These games would basically have to sell like they would have to sell like the first telephones where everyone was getting a telephone in their house, like everybody, in order for this shit to make its money back.
I remember hearing a rumor. This was back during before Bioshock Infinite was coming out because that game got delayed, and obviously that game needed to come out because money had to be made.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard a rumor that Ken Levine's like, yeah, everybody's gonna buy this game, even people who are nearly broke are gonna buy this game. And I'm just kind of like, yeah, it was like this even before then the
We're there.
sign that were there. It was
Well, when
written
this
on the
game kept
wall.
on getting delayed, like when a game gets delayed that much, I don't mean like a single delay. I mean like multiple delays, delay. This game was supposed to come out like 5 years ago, and then it got delayed even beyond that. And the only reason it came out this year is because like the Singapore government put money into this game, and they were going to take those grants and subsidies away, and Ubisoft was going to have to pay back some of that money. So they were like, "Shit, we got to take it out. We got to put it out right now." And what you wind up getting is a pirate game that's shitty.
Yeah, yeah. It
Like I've
was
talked to people who've played it. They're like, I could like they made a great pirate game like years ago with Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag.
why didn't they build off of that?
Yeah, why did they build it? Take away the assassins and just make it a pirate game? Nah, the fuck is wrong with you? I would go a
Er-
step
er-
further. I would say go on Steam and look up Sid Meier's Pirates of the Caribbean. You'll have a better experience
Yeah,
than this shit right here.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly. And I mean, like I said, you see a lot of these companies that they end up delaying these games. These games just are just astronomically expensive, and they come out overhyping and overselling these games because you know they got to dig themselves out of this pit they made for themselves.
I don't think they're going to be
They
able to
need
do
to,
it.
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
they're
think they'll
not.
be able to pull it off. Mostly
Yeah.
because they're trash. Ubisoft, name the last really good Ubisoft game you played.
Uh, we toss up between Rayman Legends and Rayman Origins.
All right.
Maybe, maybe even going way back, Assassin's Creed 2. But other than that, those are all old games. Those games came out like 10 years ago.
All right. I'll go a step. I'll tell you mine. None. I haven't played a good even Rayman Legends. I'm like, oh, this is kind of fun, and then I play it for about, and I make it to about 45 minutes to an hour, and I'm like, eh.
Yeah,
I'd rather play another 2D platformer like Donkey Kong Country on my Super Nintendo or Donkey Kong Country 2.
yeah,
You know, like Rayman Legends and Rayman Origins feel like they're trying too much. You know, we got a hip, cool Rayman. I don't need hip and cool. I just need solid gameplay, bitch. Um, the last Far Cry game I actually enjoyed. And I'm like, this is an interesting concept. Was Far Cry Primal, where you were in prehistoric times. My only problem with that game is that they made all the cavemen white people, and I'm like, you do know that the birthplace of humanity was somewhere in Africa, right? So if you put this someplace in Africa, it would probably be more interesting to me than just a whole bunch of white people. Sorry, Caucasians. Um, and the last Far Cry game I had fun on that was just hilarious was Far Cry Prey, which was the one that was on the Wii, where you basically gain the ability to like use waggle controls. Like it had first person shooter, but you got infected with this virus that basically gave you primal abilities, so you could saber tooth jump on motherfuckers and throw their asses into the architecture of the game. And it was semi open world, like on the Wii. It was like, wow, this is actually pretty good. But I haven't, like, Ubisoft hasn't released a game where I'm like, this is amazing for years, for fucking years, dude.
Yeah.
And when you mention that to people, they're like, oh, you just hating, you just hating. Everything is you just hating.
Well, they were doing some interesting stuff with their art engine, but then they just decided, now we can't. We
To
can't.
shutter that studio,
Yeah. It's like,
yeah,
okay. I mean, you know,
yeah.
they had a couple of decent little games come out with Child of Light and
And
that.
that tactical World War I game.
Yeah, but it's like, nah, I can't do it. It's like, I was like, well, you can't. I mean, you're doing some different things outside of the usual stuff, and it's just like, nah.
Unless it makes $1 billion, fuck it.
It's like, you can't make a game and have it sell only at 250,000 copies and be all right. Okay, yeah, whatever. It's just go big or go home. Like, and this is why yeah, this is why we're going to probably enter a new crash if we haven't already. I mean, the way these companies keep bleeding out people, just keep throwing people out. It's like,
That's true. But yeah, man, I'm at the point now where I just don't really have much faith in these companies, and I'm tired of people spending metric fuck tons of money on this shit because it's not, you're not getting your money back. You know, it's unsustainable.
yeah.
But that's my own personal opinion. You agree? Disagree?
I agree. It was promised to be rectified if they decide to scale back.
What's wrong with you,
Focus.
man? They ain't doing that. Ubisoft has spent too much money and cut too many deals with governments to give people money for them to do that shit. So it's not gonna happen. Let's move on to the next topic. Movies. I'm looking forward to Godzilla versus Kong, or sorry, Godzilla and Kong, Fallen Return, whatever. So I'm looking forward to that.
Godzilla and Kong movie coming out.
Yeah, it's coming out the end of this month.
Oh, okay.
Also, X-Men '97.
This I take it takes place in the 90s.
It's a continuation of X-Men from the '90s.
Oh.
I gotta go to the
Oh,
restroom. I'll be right back. Continue talking about media that's coming out that you look forward to.
The animated series that I guess some people are worried about. Speaking of media that's coming out or is out, there is the new Avatar: The Last Airbender live action thing that's on Netflix that looks kind of terrible. Um, I don't know. Uh, Or apparently they were doing some stuff with certain characters that they're going to butcher their character growth. But media, not a lot that I'm really looking out for. Um, no, there hasn't really been a lot of movies that have caught my attention. I don't, like I said, I don't really watch too much TV lately, and I don't watch a ton of movies. Um, Games, on the other hand, Dragon's Dogma is coming out next week. Dragon's Dogma 2. That looks interesting. Can't wait to play that. Also, another game that's coming out the same day. Another big game. Looks interesting. Um, let's see.
Anyway, sorry, I got sick there for a second. Um, yeah, there's some good shit coming out. I'm looking forward to Kong versus Kong and Godzilla. X-Men '97.
What's
They
the premise of Kong versus or Kong Godzilla?
Yeah, they team up like in a buddy cop movie to take on a bigger threat. Typical, 80s cop action, except with a giant gorilla and a dragon monster. Um, let's see. I'm looking forward to X-Men '97. Like I said, I'm also looking forward to. Apparently, they announced that they're also doing a Spider-Man cartoon on Disney Plus, which I'm like, why did it take you guys so goddamn long? Um, so there's some good stuff
Hi.
coming out.
When does the X-Men 97 stuff come out?
Supposedly later on this week or next week.
Okay, where is that airing at?
Disney Plus.
Disney Plus. Okay.
So gotta have Disney Plus in order to watch it. But I got Disney Plus, so I don't care. Uh, you agree? Disagree? How do you feel? Anything you looking forward to watching this year, this summer, this
Um,
spring such summer?
no, I haven't really. Nothing's really caught my attention. Um, I wonder if it's all the. Did they release the original X Men stuff that came out in the 90s?
Should
Is
be
that on?
on Disney Plus.
Okay, so I might rewatch that because I watched a little bit of it. I didn't really watch it intensely. I mostly watched that X Men Evolution.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of that series.
Yeah,
I was like, I don't really like this art style because I'd grown up watching the '97 series, which started in like '93, and so
yeah,
it was like X-Men Evolution was like, well, actually, this is before early on, and Toad was part of the school. I'm like, man, fuck you. Toad's always been a villain.
yeah,
The only good thing about that show is that it showed how Magneto had experimented on Nightcrawler, and when he finally found out that in order to enhance his abilities, and when he finally found out how he beat the ever living shit out of Magneto. Because yeah, Magneto's really powerful, but there's always it's always rock paper scissors with mutants. So certain mutants are good against other mutants, and so Magneto was like, I have an energy shield, but like it can't cover your entire body. It just covers an area around you. So Nightcrawler can teleport right next to you and beat the ever living shit out of you, which is what he did. I mean, he beat the brakes off of Magneto. It was embarrassing. I'm like, oh, master of magnetism, more like master getting your ass kicked by a teenager.
yeah. But that was like, because I know that that show came out and there was like a bit of X Men hype. You had that show, and then you had the first movie that came out around the same time that cartoon was airing. I think it was airing on WB, and then it got syndicated to Cartoon Network because all the cartoons that get eventually canceled end up on Cartoon Network, and every once in a while they get more popular because they end up on Cartoon Network, and like Futurama and Family Guy. Uh, was a combination of DVD sales and the fact that they end up syndicated on Adult Swim.
Yeah, I
Like
never
more,
really liked
more
Family Guy. I know a lot of people liked it, but I was like, eh.
like the first few seasons.
Thing is that everyone on that show is a piece of shit. So it's not. There's no one to really gravitate towards to say, oh, I like this character.
I mostly gravitated towards the Brian and Stewie adventures.
Yeah,
Other
but then
than
they made Brian a piece of shit too. So it was like, just don't care anymore.
that, I mean, I agree. They're not anybody. There's nobody on that show that you would want to idolize. But
Maybe Chris. Chris is pretty chill, but the rest of them are like, you're a piece of shit.
yeah, that's where I ended up watching it. At least X Men Evolution. But yeah, I think I think I'm always an hour behind. So every time I came home, I was ended up catching like the tail end of the OG X Men show. So I might go back and check it out.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna tell you right now, X Men, especially the old Fox one, the '97 one. It basically the first four seasons really hold up. They did Dark Phoenix better than any of the movies have ever done. Dark Phoenix.
I
Um,
wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that.
Days of Future Past, I think it's better in the original on the TV show than it is in the movies. I know people love the Matthew Vaughn one. Oh, it's great. Go watch. Go look. They managed to do Days of Future Past in 4 episodes. 4 or 5 episodes, and it's done better than what you did with Matthew Vaughn. So fuck off. Um, but that's my own personal opinion. You agree, disagree, don't care?
Um, I am intrigued, because I've heard a lot of good things about the series. So it's good that they were able to continue it. It's gonna be interesting. I wonder how many of the old voice actors are coming back.
Most of them, except the dude who voices Apocalypse, because he died.
Oh,
Yeah. And the guy who they have the same guy who voiced Wolverine, but he's aged and his voice has changed, so he doesn't sound as he used to back in the day. Um,
yeah, yeah, that's gonna happen.
they also made Rogue's ass a little bit smaller. It's not as ass-tastic as it was back in the day. Like a little kid, like god damn, she got some badonkadonk. Like you looked at Gambit and it was like, look, man, I know if you touch her or even try to sleep with her, you'll die. But man, just take a chance, see what happens.
Just take a chance. Yeah.
It's like I'm gonna fuck Rogue. The only person who could maybe fuck Rogue and not die is maybe the Hulk, because the Hulk has so much vitality that even if she drained it, it wouldn't kill him. But that's about it. But enough about that. Let's move on to the final topic. Yeah, this is gonna be a short cast because I'm sick. Hot take slash free topic. Do you have any hot takes or free topic you'd like to share that you're like, I need to get this off my chest?
Um, I think I don't think Nintendo's trying to kill emulation. Um, one, they really can't, and two, I don't even if they tried, I don't think it would just be financially viable for them to do that. It just doesn't make a lot of financial sense.
No, they're not
Like,
trying to kill
yeah,
emulation. They just want to control how you emulate their games, i.e., by paying an overpriced amount of money to play it on their consoles.
I mean obviously that's true, but like I know everybody's freaking out about Yuzu and stuff. It's like they just only went after Yuzu, and it's simply
No,
for the
they went
fact
out
that
for the three of them: Yuzu, the competitor Yuzu, and some company that, some site that hosts GBA ROMs.
oh so they're going on a warpath, huh?
Yep.
Oh,
Like I
okay.
said, Nintendo is not anti-emulation because guess what? When you play your games on the Nintendo library, that's fucking emulation. They just want you to pay $20 to $50 a year to play those games instead of you being able to play it whenever the fuck you want for free.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is. I know there was one emulator that yeah they went after Yuzu, Citrus, and also that because that was made by the same people that made Yuzu, and who else? They went after because another couple emulators popped up. They went after as well. Um, I don't think the reason they have such a hate boner for Yuzu emulate or Switch emulation is because
Because the Switch is still a viable commercial product and they don't want to lose money.
yeah, yeah. So it's not like they're wasting their time with like Samu or Dolphin. So
No, those are old consoles.
exactly,
They
it's
don't
not.
sell them commercially anymore. They lose no money if people aren't, even if you buy games for those consoles, the money isn't going to Nintendo. So they don't
Yeah.
care.
Uh,
Anything else to add before we wrap things up, sir?
um. Nah, I'm good.
All right, that's the end of the cast. Sorry we had a shorter one today, but I am sick as a goddamn dog. So that's the end of the cast. Rate, comment, share, subscribe, and play your games. Anything you want to pimp out, Kenoshi?
Project Console 7:30 Eastern Standard Time.
Tuesdays.
Tuesdays, yeah.
Yeah, this is Mr. Red Fox, and we have a BS Buster cast every Wednesday, 7:30 to 9. typically, but I am sick as a dog today, so we had a very truncated cast. Sorry about that. I'll try to upload something to make up for it.